Forza fans, and welcome to another episode of Forza Horizon 5 Let's Go live with Playground Games. Since the game's announcement last month, by the way, we've asked you what you want to know about Forza Horizon 5, and we have now dedicated some time to answer some of those questions during these live streams. Today, we are specifically dedicating an entire episode to one of the most requested topics in the Forza community, but before we get onto it, let's do some quick introductions. Beside me, once again, is Playground Games creative director Mike Brown, and a new face, lead audio designer Fraser Strachan. How are you, Mike? Let's start there.
It is so exciting to be here. I think you touched on there. This is a topic that the community have really been looking forward to, but I think that excitement is matched by our excitement to come and show what we've been working on.
Big vibes today, big vibes. Fraser, over to you. First time on the show. Can we have maybe a quick elevator pitch of who you are?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Fraser Strachan. I'm the lead audio designer on Forza Horizon 5, and I lead the whole audio team on all the different various bits and bobs. But everything you hear in the game essentially goes through me.
Now that's a bit of a statement. All right, I am eager to find out more about exactly what that means, but first, let's take a quick look at the schedule for today. So starting things off, Mike and Fraser will walk us through how they captured car audio for Forza Horizon 5 and then integrated those sounds into the game.
It's going to be cool.
They'll then debut new audible upgrades in the game, and we'll go through the audio improvements on the Xbox Series X and S consoles.
Okay.
And as always, if you have any questions as we go along, especially around today's audio theme, put those in chat and we'll answer a few at the end of the stream. So, Mike, we're going to go over to you first before we deep dive into the nerdery, and I specifically want to know what's so exciting about the car sounds we're going to be talking about today in Forza Horizon 5.
Yeah, so in Forza Horizon 5, we have the largest car list we've ever launched with, hundreds of cars, and I am just super excited about the fact that each one of them sounds unique, it sounds different, it sounds authentic.
Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, I was going to say, you did mention mere seconds ago that every sound has to go through you, so let's unpack that, I think. What does that mean?
Sure, yeah. I mean, so I actually work really closely with Mike, sort of figuring out what Mike's creative vision is for the game and trying to translate that into an amazing soundscape for our games. And I think both of us were super excited to choose somewhere like Mexico, which has such a strong audible palette to it. Like, as soon as you say Mexico, you know what the soundscape sounds like, you know what the ambience is, the music, the car culture. It just comes with all of that bundled into it, and we were so excited to get into that. But Mike and I worked really closely on things like, as I mentioned, the music.
Is it only me, right, that can hear this guy's inside of his mouth?
Myself and Fraser, along with Dave Orton, a regular on these streams, if you're a regular viewer, we're responsible for collating that soundtrack and bringing all of the artists on board and getting those soundtracks together. We're not actually going to talk in any more depth about the soundtrack on this show. We'll pick that up in a later show. Yeah. So this is all about car audio today.
And that's a perfect segue, because I want to know the most important question is, how do you make the sound for so many cars in a car game?
Well, I mean, you can't have this many cars without having loads of good car recordings.
Absolutely.
You need to have really good source. And one thing I'm really excited to share with everyone is that we've actually been out and we've recorded and added over 320 brand new car recordings to our existing library, which means that we've got an absolutely phenomenal amount of source to make the cars sound as best as they possibly can. So the cars in Horizon 5 are going to sound legit.
And to prove that, we actually have something we can watch now. We're going to unpack a little bit about how you recorded these, because it looks incredible. So we're going to be showing this in the background. Unfortunately, we're going to be yapping over the top of it. So if you do want to watch a clean version, don't worry, there will be another one uploaded at a later time. But Fraser, what is it we're looking at here then?
So we're just looking a little bit at some of the cars that we've been out and recording over the last few years. It really did take the last 2-3 years to really sort of build everything from the ground up. We needed that extra time to really look at how we revolutionize how we were doing the cars, because it just takes a long time.
That BM looks beefy, bro.
So we've got brand new processes in place. And as I mentioned, it really starts with getting really great car recording source. So with this many cars, we need to get out and source a lot of cars, like finding
I mean, you
people.
lot don't have these just in your garage.
Yes, I mean, that's what I was thinking, bro.
I mean, do you know what? They did actually record a Mustang, and then I found out the day after that they'd been at a racetrack with a Mustang, and I was like, guys, it's like...
Maybe it says something about the sound of your car. No, it's true. We'll get your car out and record it as well.
Thank you.
it does take a long time to source all the different people with all these different vehicles and get them to send us videos of like what they sound like, because every car, there's hundreds of variations of them, and they do vary in how they actually sound as well. So we want them to sound crisp and full of like all the frequencies that we want to try and record.
It's pretty incredible, right? The XJ220 is probably one of the rarest cars in the world, and it's just like calling somebody up and asking if we can borrow their car for a bit.
You just wax the microphones on it like it was no big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite car recordings that we've actually got in the game. It's such a rare engine, and it just translates so well into the game. And you sort of see that we're recording them out on an airstrip. We need that for various reasons, so that it's flat and you can record the car in a single gear going all the way up to the red line. And
right?
all the way back down again. And you need that length as well, because if you're recording a hypercar, you maybe don't need it to be as long, because it can get up to top speed fairly quickly. Whereas if you're recording a truck like this, or an old banger or vintage car, then you kind of need a stretch of land that goes all the way up to Scotland, to be honest.
Bro,
so
they've even done the trucks, bro.
Length, sometimes you even worry that you're going to go off the end. But fortunately, it's never happened. This was an interesting truck to record, actually, because you can see the engine is exposed at the back, and we have to do a lot of work to wrap muffling around the microphones to make sure that all of that wind that is traveling around the front of the vehicle and coming around the back you don't hear that in microphones, because it can sound really kind of distorted once you get up to top speed. Some of these cars can go really fast, including this truck. So we do take each car out, and each one is its own specific beast. Like, it comes with its own challenges. This one was different compared to, like, we've got these Lancias as well.
Rocket,
which is cool.
hey, Rick, it would be amazing, bro. I was going to call you Ruckus.
Minimum probably go out with
Rick,
around about 8
amazing.
microphones
Look,
for each
Stratus,
car,
bro.
but sometimes we'll attach more if they've got really good transmission sounds, or if it's a hybrid car, we might make sure we're recording the electric whines on them as well. So it's a bit like a drum kit. You attach like multiple different microphones, and then once you get back to the studio, you can have a listen and see which ones sound the best at the different positions on the microphone and mix them all together.
No worries, Sam. Get yourself
really
some
fun
food.
car to get out on the track. Really raspy, really kind of like quite violent, actually.
Yeah, I can't believe you guys got a Stratus. That is, I like one that looks to be museum quality as well. It's like an absolute perfect condition.
Well, this whole thing just looks like a car nerd's dream. Was there any that was quite? I mean, you mentioned the Jag getting out there and filming. That was pretty amazing. Were there any other highlights from this long session you were doing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think my favourite is the Morgan three-wheeler, purely because it's such a unique car. Like, it's basically, it's a V2, almost like a motorbike
Could
engine.
be scummy.
You can only fit one person in it. So normally, when there's like a passenger and a driver, we can get in the car and sit there and tell them exactly how to drive the car. Whereas a vehicle like that, you kind of have to just shove the recorder in and tell them what to do and hope that it sounds good when it comes back. But yeah, there's some really cool cars, and a lot of these people that bring their cars along, they'll be Forza fans themselves, so they'll turn up and they'll be excited to hear them in the game. So I'm sure they'll all be glad to see these.
Well, if you need to do any pickups with a Corsa, do let me know.
Right.
I can be available at a moment's notice.
Noted. Mustang.
Can't look at a three-wheeler, bro.
Sorted.
Oh, there is the Morgan three-wheeler
There it
as
is.
well.
This was brilliant. I mean, you could hear this, the same volume down the end of the runway that it was right next to you. So it was just an absolute beast. It was so raspy. It's incredible.
It sounds like a World War II plane, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, man.
It's cool. So we got this, and then you'll see coming up in a minute, we also went out and recorded multiple different types of Supras. So the Supra was an interesting one that we added to Forza Horizon 4. There was a lot of conversation around the sound of it. Does it sound stock? Like, is that an upgraded one? And honestly, we kind of never really had that concept of the two in a Horizon game before. So one thing we were really keen to do was try and get multiple Supras out and record. So this is the stock one that you can see here. Still sounded great, so absolutely terrific. Really cool sort of dump valve sounds on it. But then we actually got another Supra along to the same session, which just battled it out. And you'll see coming up in a second, they both were revving next to one another, and it really paints the picture of what it sounds like to upgrade your car from stock up to something else.
Oh my god, this is going to be
the
nuts!
thing I loved about the upgraded
there
Supra
it
is
is.
there it is.
There they are, head to head. Let's go.
Whoa, listen to that. That would blow your head off.
Absolutely
That sounds
spitting fire
incredible.
there.
Yeah, we actually lost a few microphones to these.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a microphone cemetery somewhere in PG.
Someone clip that,
this one
please.
sounded
Izzy, can you
incredible.
clip that?
When it passed by, you just hear the kind of sounds
Yeah,
as it goes
that
past.
noise exactly.
Yep, and like all those sounds that we record in these cars across the 320 plus, we've managed to curate them and really make a massive library of source out of all that stuff as well.
So I suppose the big question in the room is, how does that turn into a game then? How do you take all the sounds you pick up from this track, these lovely folks who have these wonderful cars, and then how do we actually hear them when we play them?
Well, it's something that Mike and the dev team kind of, they're quite jealous when they see us bring these cars back to the studio.
Yeah, so we're giving you this presentation now. Fraser does this maybe 10 times throughout development, where he's just like, hey everybody, here's another video of us out on a track with a load of cars. And then
My job's great.
Yeah.
well, then we get the job of going and like playing them in game and seeing what they feel like,
This
and
is
then,
true, this is
and
true.
Come on,
then
show
providing
us it in
feedback,
game,
which
come
usually-
on.
which is usually along the lines of sounds amazing. Yeah.
Show
Yeah.
us it in
I mean,
game, come on.
I guess to get a little bit more technical, one of the things I'm really excited about is previous Horizon games, we were developing our granular hybrid looping technology, which is something we've been working on for a long time, but it's taken a while to develop to the point where we could really ramp it up to using it across all these cars. So in previous games, we were maybe using it on, I'd say, about 10 to 15% of the cars, such as in Horizon 4. We're using it on 100% of the cars now in Horizon 5, which is great. They all sound fantastic. For anyone who's not really sure exactly what granular synthesis is, the old method was essentially a looping method, which would take a car and we'd put it in a garage on a dyno and get it to play back at, like, say, 1,000 RPM, 2,000 RPM, 3,000 RPM. And it was a computer that was doing that. So it was a fairly simulated environment. We chopped the loops out from those and then play them back. So there's a few things. They can sound a little bit like they're in a garage and not really out on track. And they can also kind of sound a little bit wrong when you don't get the engine rotations matching up correctly. So with our new granular synthesis techniques, we actually take the recordings that we get out on track, having driven up to the red line, back down again, we chop each of the individual engine rotations up into a tiny little sample, and we end up with thousands of little audio files that we can play back in the game. And the benefit of granular is that it runs at 90 frames per second, which it obviously clocks faster than our game actually runs. And the cool thing about that is a lot of people will say the cars feel more responsive. It just feels like when you rev the controller, you're doing that in the game, and it feels far more like responsive, like you're in control of it. And that's what you're seeing there when it's 90 frames per second. It's just far more reactive, and I'm super excited for everyone to get in and have a listen.
Well, talking of have a listen, we do have an exclusive look and listen right now at some of these cars in action. So let's take a peek. And once again, we will be pausing to listen to some of these beauties, but we will be putting a clean version up later. So let's have a listen to this one first.
This one's a Supra tearing it through the living desert.
It is, yeah. That's the black Supra, I think, or one of the other ones that you saw on that car.
Now they've got a Lancia Strata. It's one of my absolute favourite cars when I was a kid.
It's amazing. This car handles really nicely. It's really kind of bouncy along all the different terrains. Oh, here we go. Bit of deja vu here. And you really hear that rasp coming through that we heard out on track.
Yeah, we won't need to encourage you to do this, but people will already go and grab all these clips and lay them over top of each other and realise that the Stratos we had on track really does sound exactly like the one.
That's what I'm going to be doing after the stream. It's going to be going back and seeing where I can get all the different sounds to be like, yes, you did do it. Well done.
This one, I think, translated really well into the game.
Yeah, Golf R there.
This one's lovely. Quite a lot of people around the studio have this car, so there's a lot of people who know exactly how it should
resonate with this one, yeah. I think it's one of the things that, I mean, following last episode in which we were talking about the sky, and the sky being an actual image.
Look how beautiful this game looks.
And now knowing that these cars are the actual recorded, what I'm trying to say is art is quite literally imitating life in a game that is ridiculously fun to play, right?
We're trying to be as accurate and sort of, I guess, trying to portray real life as much as we possibly can, whilst making it fun for all the players to listen to. I love the sound of this GT.
The Huracan cover car from FH2.
It's the vibes coming off that right now, with the fireworks in the background. Oh, goodness. When is it, November 9th? Is it now, please?
This one was interesting because someone on the dev team actually has this in the car park, and every day he would come around and say, "Come and have a listen." Like,
dude, look how amazing this game looks,
exactly
bro.
like this.
Do some extra credit.
Yeah. These Ferraris sound really mean. And we got some really good Ferrari recordings.
Look at the roads, bro. Oh my god.
And of course, the Dodge Viper, which I think a lot of people will be happy to see this featured here. Just a little snippet. There's something interesting to point out
I love
here,
this so much. I'm literally in love.
When you see this video after the stream, something to listen out for is all the different tyre sounds and all the different vehicles. We've now got different skid sounds based on the vehicle and the tyre size, so that
they've literally worked on everything.
Truck, you'll hear that, as well as skid tyres and drift tyres and stuff.
I should be like that and waiting for us to finish talking.
This one, I love this area of the map because it features into something we'll probably talk about a little bit later on, where you can hear everything slap off of the canyon walls.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm literally in love,
I feel like
bro.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. It's something I know very fondly from the Forza community, is that they all love slapping on turbos and superchargers to their cars, and so I sort of have to ask on behalf of them if those have improved as well.
They have, so I think...
Wonderful.
All right, I'm off. Yeah, I mentioned that because we've been out and recorded so many cars, and especially something like the different Supras, they all come with different blow-off valve sounds. We've got this massive library of sounds now. As part of our improvements, we've actually created a brand new modular system, which essentially it sort of intelligently takes all of our database information that we have. So it figures out, is it a V8, is it a muscle car, is it modern or is it vintage, and basically pulls from a library of different sources so that it attaches them onto the cars for you, whereas before it was quite a static system. The other thing I'm really excited about is that all of that stuff I was telling you about, granular synthesis running at 90 frames per second, we've actually now got all the turbo winds, the supercharger winds, and all the transmission winds running through that same system. So all of that is super reactive, and they sound really good, like up next to the car engines. And one of the cool things using this new modular system is that it actually allows us, when you're upgrading your car, to hear the different sounds of the turbos and superchargers as they're applied.
Oh, so folks will be able to experience that in real time when they come to upgrade their own vehicles?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
So you'll now, as you're upgrading your car, you'll be able to hear those upgrades taking effect. So when you change the exhaust, the intake, the camshaft, you'll be able to rev the engine and hear the difference that makes to the sound of your car.
I think we actually have a video showcasing some of that in action.
Any second.
There it is.
Wow!
Yeah, so here you can see that we're in the player house in the normal upgrade flow, and you can go to your intake, and here, as you apply the different stock, street, race, and sport performance mode. You can hear that actually change the sound of your car.
Reminds me of like Forza Horizon 2 style,
we will make this
whether it looks Horizon 3-ish.
Afterwards.
Yeah. A cool new feature as well, you can now rev your engine from inside the garage. So as you're trying out these different upgrades, you can rev the engine and see exactly what it sounds like.
I'm also a big fan of the graph. Just going to say it. Love a graph. It sort of adds to how nerdy and wonderful this all feels.
So you can do it with your exhaust as well, depending on the upgrade paths per car. You'll be able to hear your exhaust note change. And it's important to point out that this doesn't actually it doesn't change the volume of the car, because then it would unsettle the mix. What it does is it actually changes the character of the car. So it sounds completely different, and it gives you that feeling of actually taking off a complete exhaust and replacing it with an entirely different manufactured part. And then one thing, this is one of my favourite parts.
Do that go
we've
up
been
then?
working with the physics team really, really closely to introduce drivetrain flex back into the game, which is really cool. And that sort of gives you that wobble on the cars, so that as you're taking off in lower gears, because it goes,
it's reacting to it,
and then as you're in higher gears, it's kind of which is really cool. But
any more sounds of what it does?
Honestly, Charlie, he does this all the time. He's like that guy from Police Academy.
Unsufferable. And the other thing you would have seen there on the camshaft upgrades is a lot of people have picked up on the limiter behaviors in some of the cars. So as the car is bouncing off the limiter, if it's at a lower one, all the cars in Forza Horizon 4 used to have a set limiter behavior, so they go like wow, 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 where they're up the top. Whereas as you upgrade it, you'll hear it kind of go wah, 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 when it's up the top.
Whoa.
Do you do this in meetings?
All the time.
Is this how you communicate what you want your team to do?
Yeah, I want it a little bit more rather than
it works. I completely understand what you mean, so it's effective.
So yeah, as you upgrade your car on your intake, your exhaust, you will have seen there that we had, as you go through all the different turbo layers, the supercharger layers, the centrifugal superchargers as well. You'll hear all those changing in real time as you rev, as well as
this is unreal, man. This is unreal.
Sport modes for each of the different turbos. It'll go from being kind of like a to more of a.
I don't think we could do a show without these now. I want you to know that.
There you go.
Rob, appreciate the follow-on. Thanks for
that. Here's the sound of the week.
Man's making turbo sounds on stream.
I think it's cool to note that if you're wondering why the car looks so realistic, why it sits in the scene so nicely, it's because you've got ray tracing active as well.
So actually, I mean, does ray tracing affect anything audio-wise as well as visual while we're here?
It does, yes. So we have taken ray tracing and we're using it throughout the world. So actually we're sending out ray traces to detect walls, buildings, and ceilings as well.
Like echolocation?
Like echolocation, yeah.
Can you do a dolphin sound effect?
I can't do a dolphin sound effect. You know
I
can't do a
I
dolphin
bet
sound
you
effect.
can.
I've just heard all these
I bet you can.
I think it's your turn.
I'm not doing it.
All right.
Yes, so I think bats use ray tracing as well, but yeah.
You just didn't want to do a dolphin.
No, I was like,
yeah,
anyway,
ray tracing. Go on,
yeah, so ray tracing, we're using ray tracing to detect walls, ceilings, buildings, which means that you'll hear your car bouncing off of all the buildings around you, and that'll change with the environment. It's really cool.
So kind of like how they've got in Edinburgh right now. When you drive through Edinburgh, Forza Horizon 4, you can hear sounds of the
so when you're
cars
driving
past.
for instance, it basically.
So they've worked on that a little bit more too.
You can hear it slapping off of all the buildings. And I mentioned there as well that we're detecting ceilings, so things like tunnels, for instance. If you're listening with spatial audio, something like Dolby Atmos with your headphones on, you'll actually be able to hear your car bouncing off of the roofs as well, which is really cool.
What I love is that, like, when you're in the city and it's like a really hard surface, you get that kind of crisp echo, whereas like when you're in the rainforest in the jungle, it's still bouncing back off of all the trees and foliage, but it's much more muffled, it's much more organic feel to it, but still like really effective.
Every material in the game has been set
sounds.
up with a different absorption coefficient, which is kind of an acoustic term, which essentially says if it's concrete, then it'll bounce off more sound than it would if it's foliage or something like that, which actually absorbs the sound. So it's really dynamic to the world around you. Something we were chatting about before as well is occlusion that we're using ray tracing for as well, which means that as you play something like a multiplayer mode, we're actually detecting where every single car is in relation to your car, and we're muffling the sound of the cars to make sure that if a car is behind a building, for instance, you know not to head straight towards the car, but to maybe like head up the alleyway and try and cut them off as they come around the corner.
I use hiding to win, so that's not fair that that's been...
I should add that we're talking about Eliminator here and not just the regular multiplayer race, because otherwise those behaviours that Fraser is describing would be unusual.
Really.
They're just behind you.
What about other players? Do they get to experience these changes that you've made as well within the cars?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything that I've talked about with granular engines, the modular system that we've developed, every other car that you race against will benefit from those as well, and it makes races just sound
I bet that launch moment is, and you hear all the engines kick up, and you could just like name them all.
It's so effective, honestly. Like Fraser told me about it before I heard it, and I've got to be honest, I was like, yeah, I'm sure that'd be cool. And then but then the actual experience of it it's so visceral and interesting, and you do genuinely hear like, oh, it's a V10, that's a V8. You can just hear every car going past you, or as you're going past them. Yeah,
it's really cool. And as your players drive past you, you'll hear all those upgrades that they've applied. So if your friend has applied supercharger and you kind of want to hear that, you'll be able to hear that next to you as well. I think something to point out as well is that all of the AI cars and your friends around you, the sound of their car will be the exact same sound that your car has. So if two Lamborghinis pull up next to one another, they'll both sound the same. They're sharing the same engine, which I know is something that players had sort of mentioned in Horizon 4 before as a bit of an issue, which I'm glad to say we fixed that now.
Lovely. And now I do have to ask a rather personal question, and that is a little birdie does tell me that everything does indeed sound better on the Xbox Series consoles. Can you confirm how and why?
Yeah, that's right. It's one of those things where, as much as we talk about the Xbox Series consoles, you tend to talk about how great everything looks, the amount of detail we've been able to add, how beautiful the world is. But the consoles actually unlock quite a lot of extra audio capabilities as well.
Absolutely. So with the new Xbox Series consoles, we've actually unlocked a new compression format which allows for much higher fidelity audio. It's almost imperceivably.
Oh, fuck this, mate! I'm getting an Xbox Series X,
which is great. It's kind of it's what audiophiles talk about all the time. And it was a joy for me because a lot of people, I know in the clips that we've released already, I sort of mentioned the fact that it sounds a bit cleaner, sounds a bit more refined, and that's what you're hearing is actually the higher fidelity compression format, which just makes everything sound so much better. And the good thing is it's not just your car that benefits from that, it's absolutely everything in the game. So the ambience, the music, the dialogue, and the cars, everything sounds better on Xbox Series consoles. I must say as well that if you're playing on an Xbox Series console and you're playing against all your friends who all have these granular engines, thanks to the modular system, you'll actually be able to hear more cars around you as well as more of those upgrades and
Wait, so are they saying that Xbox Series S and X is going to be better than PC?
Stuff, which is great. Just
is that what they're saying right now?
To the game.
I love it. And talking of character, it's my favourite part of the stream, in which we go to you lot for some questions. So you've been asking questions throughout the stream. I'm actually going to ask the first one because I'm the most important person in the room. And I want to make sure that we talk about convertibles in essentially every single episode because it's been a consistent theme. So I want to know, we already know that the lids go up and down, but do they change the sound of the car too?
They do.
Hey, yes. There we go. I thought as much.
It's one of those things that you maybe don't think about, but it's kind of a subtle shift. Previously, we kind of only had the concept of was it a hardtop car or was it soft top, and it was binary. It was either one or the other, which made it really hard for us to implement something like convertibles. Because we've completely revolutionized the way that we're doing car audio for this game, we've actually been able to implement the cockpit filtering, the cockpit reverb systems a little bit different so that actually
I can't wait anymore, bro. Yeah, Ken, you're right.
Top up, it'll sound all muffled, and as it comes down, you'll actually hear all the ambience and the wildlife really creep in.
That's pretty cool.
If it's raining, you'll hear that as well. And then that's another cool point that, Dolby Atmos, you'll hear that above you as it's going down. A little bit of a geeky point, but I quite like it.
It's brilliant. Full nerd. We absolutely love it. The next question comes from Forza Horizon World, and they ask, what is your favourite car sound that you've recorded? And I give this to you both to answer.
There's so many to choose from.
I'll go first, and I'll say the Stratos. I think the Stratos is just a really cool.
Who is the best Forza Horizon streamer?
I personally really love that car, and I think it just sounds absolutely fantastic.
I'll wait, Mike. I'll wait, Mike.
I featured the BRZ because I just think it's such a cool, like, rumbling boxer engine. It's just got a really nice kind of low end to it, and I definitely picked my favorite engine to show on the stream. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, next question comes from Subterfuge Dog, who says, "How do you keep the exhaust out of the muffling?"
Self-promoting that, sub to.
So that's a good question. We have to place them a certain distance away from the exhaust. Exhaust can get really hot. Like you just wouldn't be able to touch one. So we keep them a certain distance away, and that sort of stops the exhaust being muffled by being surrounded by all these microphones. It's a bit of a test and see what sounds good. So you kind of place it on, you'll drive it up and down. If it does sound muffled, then we'll probably just move the microphone and run it up and down again. So we kind of just play it by ear.
Okay. The next question comes from Jerp. Sorry if I've said that wrong. It's a really interesting question because you've actually mentioned both these methods, and they're curious to know why you've chosen to record in this way and not using the previously mentioned dyno method.
That's a great question.
No,
I like the way you say that and then turn like
I told
yes.
I was thinking about I might ask him this one myself.
Okay, well there you go.
So thank you, Jerp.
Aside from the fact that it's really fun to get cars out on track and race them up and down, there's a really important point, which is if you put a car on a dyno, then essentially you can basically only record the car when it's accelerating. There's no way to get that offload sound. Basically, it has no load applied to the engine. So as soon as you let off the throttle, the car's not going anywhere. So it basically just lets off, and the deceleration just disappears. So previously, a lot of the looping cars would actually play the same acceleration loops all the way up and all the way back down again. Whereas with the method that we choose, you can go out in the car in the environment that basically best simulates what the game actually looks like.
Scotty, thank you for the 60 bits, bro.
Red line, and
I love you, dude.
You can actually decelerate you can be doing 120 miles per hour, and you can just get all the pops and bangs, all the natural whine, and decelerations do sound really different to accelerations on cars. So basically, the short answer is to get all of that lovely character
bro, what are you doing?
And detail, the pops and bangs, and all the little sweeteners that we want to record.
But also, you wanted a really fun day out.
That's the
Lots
unofficial answer.
of days out.
Exactly. The next question comes from DNK, who asks, so because the sounds have improved a lot, will the first-person car sounds be improved as well? This, I think, is a great question, by the way.
That is a great question, and probably something I forgot to touch upon. Yes, we have, as part of the car recording process, we've actually been recording cockpit impulse responses, which is a new method of doing reverb in the game.
They've really touched on everything in this game, bro. They've really worked on this.
From every frequency that the human ear can hear. So it kind of goes like whoop, up through the range. I know you like sound
noises, bro.
And what that does is it captures how the cockpit of the car reacts at each of the different frequencies all the way up the frequency range.
Okay.
And that basically means that when you feed the exhaust and engine into that reverb, then it makes the first person perspective.
This dude's got really good sounds, man.
It also
solid 10
benefits
out of 10.
all the things like the tires that you can hear skidding on the ground, just like
the one outside.
All the tires screeching on the ground, all the kick up, all the water, all the rain, all the weather.
Davey, appreciate the follow, man.
Plays through the cockpit. It just sounds like you're actually sitting in the vehicle that we've actually recorded.
Authenticity.
Yeah, I would just say
it's going to be the best driving
that is my
racing game to drop.
And I've been very keen as we've been going through development to just all of the cars we have in the game that I have driven in real life to just go and get a feel for them and drive them. And I can vouch for the fact that they really do sound authentically
trying
like
to catch me out.
Well, I would provide the feedback if it wasn't quite accurate.
Lovely. The next question comes from Gab Reiser, who asks, the huge bridge that was seen in the E3 gameplay, is that part of the huge highway that you talked about in previous streams? Great catch.
It's actually not, no. The bridge is on a separate road that runs through and above the jungle region. So yeah, not part of the highway.
Good spot, though. Good
what
spot.
camera are you looking
next
at, bro?
Question comes from Cragger Long Claw, who asks, will the Eliminator start covering the entire map?
So the circle is slightly larger. You can still pick any of the start locations, but then if that circle is in an unfortunate position for you, you may have to move quite quickly to get inside it.
You have to book it. Yeah.
Okay, but an Eliminator game can can use any part of the map, yes.
Okay, lovely. And then the last question. Oh, no, my apologies. There's another one there. So first of all, we'll do Box Fort, who asks, can we expect to see familiar Forza Horizon characters to return in Forza Horizon 5?
Yes, we can. We have a bunch of returning characters. Plenty of new faces as well, but no, we have some friendly faces. Alex and Jay are back. Scott Tyler, of course, is here, as is Amy Simpson on Pulse. Even Mike Steele is back again. we won't spoil why he is here.
What I will say is anyone watching this who knows, you're going to roll your eyes that I've said this. Many people who I am close friends with have, by the way, just mentioned I should do the voice of Anna, and I think it's a stupid idea because I sound ridiculous, but I am just going to put it out there.
Can you give me do you want to audition right now?
Okay, what do you want me to say? What's the line that you've got Anna to record?
Turn around when it's safe to do so.
Turn around when it's safe to do so.
That's quite bossy.
That was quite
bossy. I don't want you
but
screaming in my
I
ear
think
to
it'd
turn
be really
around.
effective, right? And just think about it. Maybe we'll pick it up in another stream.
Right, cool.
The actual last question, however, comes from Hugh is Banana Gaming, and they ask, is there new engine swaps in the game?
There is. This is a great question.
They've all been great questions, haven't they?
They have been great questions. Well done. Well done.
Yeah, well done, community. It's like you knew the thing. It's like you knew the things that we forgot to say during the actual show.
It's great.
Yes, a really important piece that I wanted to mention is that we are adding over 500 brand new engine swaps to the game. So where it makes sense, you'll get potentially like a V10 Asian car on an Asian car that you're driving, which is really cool. I know a lot of people said, when I upgrade my car, it's kind of like a pyramid. Everything ends up sounding like the same V12. That is hopefully no longer going to be the case. There's going to be so much variety, and hopefully I can't wait for everyone to jump in and explore and see what we have to upgrade.
I feel like your mentions are going to be bombarded with people going, look at this mixtape that I put together of this car. Do you like it? That's going to be
it's
your
a lot
whole
of engines,
like,
bro.
approving other people's creations.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, there you go. Go do that. So those are the questions we all have time for today. But before we go, I want to see if we have any more information about any upcoming shows for people to get excited about.
Absolutely. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to be taking a dive into the world of Mexico. We'll be starting to look at each of the biomes in detail and having and seeing what each one of those brings to the game.
Cool, man.
Looking a bit further into the future, we'll start to do a real deep dive into the car list.
The cars.
Yeah,
Very
obviously you've
good.
seen a bunch of cars today, but
Cool,
we'll
man.
start to go
I'll
through
be
the full car
back.
list.
Wonderful.
I'll be
That
here
sounds
when.
perfect. Mike and Fraser, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. The game, I confirm, does both look and sound amazing. And thank you everyone else at home for tuning in today. November 9th will be here before you know it, I promise.
I can't wait any longer, bro.
In the meantime, stay tuned to the Forza channels for Forza Horizon 5 news and updates on future Forza Horizon 5 Let's Go live streams